recording this session, and we are going to be sharing it externally on our Civic Nebraska and other platforms across the 3 organizations who make up Collective Impact Lincoln. So if you do have to leave early today, or if you want to share this out with anyone who wasn't able to attend, they can certainly view this later on. So just a couple of sort of housekeeping things. An FYI for those of you maybe who've been using Zoom frequently, you might know this, but the chats can be seen by the hosts of the meeting. So just going to put that out there, even the ones that you send privately to other people in the group. And then if everyone would just stay on mute, just to keep things kind of moving along. If you have a question, or if you're having any issues, technical difficulties, anything like that, go ahead and just put something in the chat, raise your hand. Kat, whose name on here is info. Kat, if you want to change your name, you can do that. She's going to be kind of taking care of all those hosting duties and making sure everything's working for us. We are currently trying to figure out how to set up the breakout rooms for the 2 breakout sessions. So Daniel, if you have any insight on how to do that after we've started the meeting and assign people to the appropriate breakout rooms, I'm sure Kat would appreciate some of that information, or anyone else who knows how to do that. So I think that's kind of all the housekeeping things. So I think, Isabel, you're gonna kind of start things off. I sent out a packet, an agenda with some other items to everyone yesterday. If you didn't get that for some reason, just send me a message and I can resend that. Otherwise, we're gonna kick things off right now. So I'll hand it over to Isabel.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for being here. I know that we're being pulled in all sorts of different directions lately, so I really appreciate everyone kind of participating today and being interested in building up your own communities. Some of you have been to a community builder workshop before, so you might know that we start with the big, like, high level, and then kind of tone it down to make sure that we're acknowledging all of the parts that make our communities, that all the parts that we do to make our communities better. So the first session, we're just going to start with our introductions and kind of setting up our story of self. So why are you even here on a Saturday morning at 10 a.m.? These are really important things to acknowledge because we're all kind of doing the work together, and we all have a lot of talents and skills to contribute. So a little bit about us. So we are Collective Impact Lincoln. We're a partnership between Civic Nebraska, Nebraska Appleseed, and South of Downtown. So I personally work for South of Downtown Community Development Organization. And we started this almost 3 years ago to see what people were hearing, or see what people were experiencing in 6 neighborhoods that were identified by the Lincoln Vital Signs Report in 2015. And so what Lincoln Vital Signs found from 2000 to 2015 was that there were higher concentrations of poverty in 6 different neighborhoods around the city, which were concentrated around the core. That is also not the entire story of our neighborhoods. There are a lot of wonderful things happening in our neighborhoods, and so we really believe in that individual and community-led project and progress-led sort of lots of words. Basically, we want the neighborhood to be leaders in themselves, and we're just kind of here to facilitate and find out what help we can provide to them. So that's a little bit about us. So like I said, we support community conversations, leadership and action, just to make sure that our communities are reaching their full potential. So while other neighborhoods might be have the privilege of time to be a little bit more organized, we know that the folks that we have in our neighborhoods might not have the luxury of time or the luxury to be, involved in a neighborhood association or anything like that. So, but we really still believe that their talents and their skills and their input are very valid. So we started out almost 3 years ago doing deep canvassing and listening to residents. So if you have ever been politically active before or anything like that, canvassing is just regularly going door to door and talking to people on your list about an issue or a candidate or something. The difference with deep canvassing, though, is that we were just there to listen. So we weren't there to sell anyone on a product, a candidate, or a party. We were just there to listen and see what came up naturally in conversation. And by doing this, we found out a bunch of different things in our neighborhood, things that people were really proud of and they wanted to see more of, and then things that were really real issues that people were experiencing in their neighborhoods. We've also supported neighborhood projects. So part of our collective impact mission was the mini grant funding. So we gave out 10 individual mini grants to different neighborhood projects. I know that there was some tree planting efforts going on. There was in Everett neighborhood an Adopt a Block program where the Everett Neighborhood Association got funds to buy gift cards and got materials. And so they had almost 20, I think they had 25 of the 50 blocks in Everett neighborhood adopted by a family. And people were seeing the improvement of that right away. People were commenting on how much cleaner the neighborhood was, and that kind of affected that community pride. Another thing that we're doing is the Community Builder Workshop, which is this. And we're also developing action committees, so folks who are interested in working on X issue. I know that Jose has worked on farmers market and food access in University Place, and even right now he's working on making sure that University Place stays connected through this social isolation. And then the last component that we do is the policy. So we've been able to successfully advocate for housing policy. That is one thing that came up as a really top concern for a lot of the people that we were talking to. And some of you have also been involved in that housing policy too. We've seen legislative bills go forward. We've seen ordinances at the city level go forward. And that was all because we were listening and trying to get that community perspective. And once you have that undeniable lived experience, it's easier for folks to not dismiss you and not say that that's not a real problem, because it is. Does anyone have any questions? So now we get to do a fun part. So we're going to ask everyone to introduce yourselves with your name and your pronouns. I think I'll kind of call out people because that seems to work better on Zoom. If you have an organization or a group affiliation, or even what neighborhood you live in, what communities you're connected with, what communities do you identify with, and do you have a skill or ability that you're hoping to share with your community? I know that we have a lot of talent in this Zoom call, and so I'm super excited to hear what folks identify as their own skills. So I'll start. My name is Isabel. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I work for South of Downtown. I'm a community organizer there, and I live in the South Salt Creek neighborhood, which is just outside of Everett neighborhood. Communities that I'm connected with, I'd say a lot of housing advocacy, so Renters Together is a group that I'm connected with. I'm also connected with the karaoke community. I like to karaoke it up. And skills or abilities that I am wanting to share with my community. I think I'm an extrovert, and I am not afraid to, knock those doors or make those phone calls. So I'm always up to volunteer for the community and anything that I can do to help out there. All right. Nancy, do you want to take it away?
Sure. I'm trying to figure out how to enable breakout rooms right now. So my name's Nancy Petito. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am the program manager for Collective Impact Lincoln. I'm housed at Civic, Nebraska. I've been in this role for, just over 2 years. My 2-year anniversary was back in April. What communities am I connected with? I lived in the near South neighborhood for just over a decade. I still feel very connected to that neighborhood, having lived there for so long. And also that's where the Civic Nebraska office is located. I'm also affiliated with an organization called Girl Power. I'm the board president, and I've been serving on that board for almost 3 years. So working to empower girls in grades 4 through 8 here in the Lincoln community, also in Nicaragua, and we just expanded our programming to Jamaica. Do I have a skill or ability? I don't like this question. I don't know. I have lots of different things that I enjoy doing. I think that working with this team, working with CIL, that's been a pretty incredible experience. And I hope that I'm able to offer any various resources that we've been asked to provide over the years. I've worked in a lot of leadership programs and components over the years, having been at the university, working there for just over a decade, but then bringing that kind of to the CIL team in the last couple of years.
Awesome. Thanks, Nancy. Lindsay, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay Limbach. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am affiliated with the Community Learning Centers as a family and neighborhood engagement coordinator. And so I work with 29 schools in little communities across the city. And so I'm connected a lot with a lot of those communities. So a lot of school and neighborhood advisory committees, community cafes. And then recently I moved to the Woods Park neighborhood. So I'm hoping to get more active on Tuesday when they have their annual meeting. Skills or abilities. I really like to write. And so like I love to volunteer for Planned Parenthood and write little postcards for them to send out, or just I do enjoy walking. And so if there was any asset mapping or just walking around neighborhoods and sharing information, I like to do that with my dogs. So any way to get out and about, I really enjoy doing that.
Thanks, Lindsay. Nora, do you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nora. I use she, her pronouns. I am a community organizer with Collective Impact Lincoln at Nebraska Appleseed. And communities I'm connected with, I have played with the Ultimate Frisbee community in Lincoln. Yeah, I feel like that's the big one. And I work in the Belmont and Clinton neighborhood. So those neighborhood organizations I've been connected with as well. Skills or abilities, feel like I'm lacking in those. But you know, I can throw a Frisbee, and I can make a mean friendship bracelet. I've been doing that during quarantine. So yeah, I'm just excited to learn about what everyone else's skills and abilities are.
Thanks, Nora. Samantha, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I can go. My name is Samantha Thomas, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am also affiliated, like Lindsay, with LPS's Community Learning Centers, our CLCs. I am officially a community builder is my title for the CLCs. And then communities that I'm connected with, I actually, so I grew up in Lincoln, but just recently moved back here. I went to college in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I am looking to be more connected with communities here, but it's been a little bit challenging during quarantine. But also, like Lindsay, I do live in the Woods Park neighborhood, so I'm hoping to get more involved there. I also do really feel connected to the LPS community just as a whole. I went to Southeast and the Arts and Humanities program, so I do really still feel connected to those roots as well. And do I have a skill? I would say my skill or ability is the ability to listen. I try to be a really good listener. Not always the best at it, but it's something I really prioritize. So yeah, I think it really helps, especially when working with communities.
Yeah, that's one of those skills that kind of goes overlooked, especially as our organizers or even anyone in this call knows holding space for each other is super valuable. Kat, you're up.
Hey, I'm Kat. I work for South of Downtown Community Development Organization as well. I'm an arts organizer. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm connected to the arts community here in Lincoln because I know so many artists. I also feel really connected to the Everett and near South neighborhoods, the Everett Cafe as well, like Lindsay. That's a really fun space. My church community. As far as skills or abilities I'm hoping to share with my community, probably, yeah, definitely art and art making, and just like how can we use creativity to think about or address issues that maybe aren't normally like something that we think arts can solve, but how do we use art to improve infrastructure or build relationships or stuff like that.
Thanks, Kat. Karina, do you want to introduce yourself? Might have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There we go.
I'm Karina. I live near the Capitol. I work at UNL. I'm involved with Renters Together. We actually were one of the first people to start it, and I'm on the board for the CDO. Skills that I have, I'm really good with working with data. And I actually have a PhD in it, so a lot of people don't know that. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a renter. And I can knit. I actually saw my needles sitting over there, so I was like, we're doing a yarn storming project, so I figured I'll work on that while we talk.
Thanks, Karina. Devin, do you want to introduce yourself? I think we're having issues with your audio. Can't hear. Try saying something. No. Kat, can you troubleshoot with Devin really quick through like the chat and stuff?
Yeah.
In the meantime, let's hear from Casey.
Hi everyone, I'm Casey. Casey Ogle. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a staff attorney with Collective Impact Lincoln. I'm housed at Nebraska Appleseed. So what communities am I connected with? I guess I'm connected with the legal community. I know some people from law school. And I'm connected with the people that I work with in CIL and at Nebraska Appleseed. And so my skill or ability would be, I think, that I'm hoping to share with my community is I think I'm good at analyzing a situation and thinking through a problem. So I hope to share that with my community.
Excuse me. Thanks, Casey. Chris?
So my name's Chris. My pronouns are he, him, his. I don't really have an organization or group affiliation. I just sort of chose to do this because it's sort of with what I'm studying with urban studies, and I just learned about Collective Impact Lincoln, and I thought it was really cool, so I want to get involved. Some communities that I'm connected with, just Northeast, North Central Lincoln more broadly. I've lived several different places within it. I went to school at Northeast. I worked in the Clinton and Hartley neighborhoods in particular, so those have a very special place in my heart. I also go to school in Minnesota, so the city of Mankato and my university are also some communities I'm connected with. And a skill or community that I'd hope to share with my community, just sort of like a passion and a curiosity that would get me to sign up for something like this on a Saturday morning.
Thanks, Chris. Vic, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm Vic Clafter, he, him, his pronouns. I'm a community organizer for Collective Impact Lincoln via Nebraska Appleseed. And I would say I'm connected to, excuse me, to my, to South Street Temple and kind of the Jewish community in Lincoln, always trying to get more connected with that group. I went to school at UNL, and so there's definitely like kind of splinter groups from there, but I feel less connected to the university itself more and more. But skill or ability, I like to do public speaking in front of large crowds. And y'all are not a large crowd, so step it up. Just kidding. But I do enjoy that. But in addition, just having one-on-one conversations is something I also really enjoy. So deep canvassing is right up my alley.
Great. We can heckle you if that'll make it better. Kimura, is that how you say your name? Do you want to go next?
It is. That actually never happens. It is Kimura. Good job. So my name is Kimura Snipes. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I guess I am affiliated with an organization, but I signed up for this just because I wanted to. But I am the Community Partnership Manager for Nebraska Civic Engagement Table. I also I think I still work for the Omaha Public Library with COVID-19 happening. I haven't been there physically, where I create a program where we focus on trauma through literacy for teenagers. I'm also elected to the Omaha Public School Board. I guess communities I'm connected with, I would probably say definitely neighborhoods. I'm president of my neighborhood association, as well as president of the South Omaha Neighborhood Alliance, which acts as an umbrella organization to neighborhood associations. We give away scholarships, and we reinvest money back into South Omaha neighborhoods. I'm also connected with the New Leaders Council. Definitely, I'm a fellow this year. Definitely the faith community. I've been active in my church since I was a little kid. I would say here in Omaha, definitely the Black community and the Latino community. Here, because of COVID-19, I've also created this Omaha community response, so definitely that community as well, and the motorcycle club community. I'm an active participator in that as well. So I'm vice president of my club. But anyway, kind of all over the place. Skills or abilities, I would say, God blessed me with the ability to encourage and empower and motivate. I love that. But also, I heard Nora say something about no skills. Every person on this planet was born with something that they are great at. Probably 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 to 20 things that they are great at. And so I think one of my skills that I bring is also being able to identify talent in people and helping them to bring that out, and definitely organizing, strategy, and leadership.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kimura. Daniel.
Sure, thanks. My name is Daniel. I am actually way out here in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. I'm going to be helping out with one of the sessions today with Jose, but I also work for Civic Nebraska, and so trying to see how do we do some things similar to Collective Impact Lincoln and other parts of the state. I identify as he, him, his, and let's see, communities that I'm connected with. I've lived in Scotts Bluff for about 6 years, so that's definitely one of the communities. Also, the Panhandle region kind of identifies as a community as well. With my church, people getting together to do music, both some vocal and percussion out here. And skills or abilities that I'm hoping to share. Yeah, music, and also one thing I'm hoping to do more this year, hopefully, is orienting people out to the hills and nature that we have, all the scenery that we have out here. Not enough people get out and to enjoy it, so that's something that I'm hoping to be able to share with others.
Thanks, Daniel. So we have Devin, Brooke, and Ali left. Devin, did you figure out your audio situation? No.
Devin, will you just type yours in the chat, and then we can all just read how wonderful you are?
Brooke, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Brooke Sullivan. She, her, hers. I am the project activities coordinator for educational talent search at UNL. Quick overview of that, because most people don't know what we are. We're a pre-college program that works with certain schools in Lincoln to encourage college access, make it equal for students that would be first generation or they're low income. So the communities I'm connected with, I would say, are the UNL community, because that's where we're housed. But in general, higher education community, and also SCC. And then I live in the North Southwood neighborhood, but I haven't seen much connection for that, but I want to be. But anyway, and then skill or ability that I can share is I have a lot of knowledge about going to college for any age. I love working with non-traditional students in particular, even though I work with middle through high school right now. And I also really like learning about technology programs. I'm not good at coding or anything like that because I haven't taken the time to try to learn it. But like earlier, Nancy, you were saying you're trying to figure out how to do breakout rooms. That's my life. So I love playing with technology to learn it, and I will figure out something if I don't know what it is. I also really like connecting people. Like if they have a need of any sort, I really like researching to figure out how if there's an organization in the community that I can, in the Lincoln community, that I can connect them with to have their needs met.
That's great. Thanks, Brooke. Allie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Allie Christensen. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm an intern with the South of Downtown Community Development Organization. And although I don't live in the core neighborhoods, I do feel connected with the Everett and Near South neighborhoods just from deep canvassing and listening to everyone's stories. I've just grown to love them very much. But I am moving to University Place in a month, so I'm excited to get connected there. And I do feel connected to the UNL residence life community too, just from being an RA and doing a lot of community building work in the dorms. As for skills, I think I really enjoy listening and just doing whatever I can to elevate people's voices and their stories and to figure out what barriers they're facing and how we can address those through policy change.
Thanks, Ellie. Devin, if you want to type about yourself in the little chat box. Devin's awesome. Devin does photography, and Devin likes to take care of Karina's dog, so that's a skill. Yeah, but we're gonna move on. I think we're running a little bit behind schedule, but I just wanted to make sure we had time to hear from everyone because I appreciate you all.
I haven't gone. I'll just do a quick introduction.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
You're good, you're good. My name is Jose Lemus. I'm one of the community organizers for Collective Impact Lincoln. I work at Civic, Nebraska, and I'm connected. I work in the Hartley and University Place neighborhoods. So I heard some people kind of involved in Northeast Lincoln, so I'd be happy to connect after the CBW so we can talk about how to build more community in that region. All right, go for it.
Thanks. So sorry about that. Jose's awesome. So we kind of like to start this with a story of self exercise, which has worked a little bit differently in person than it will work today. So if we could just take a couple of minutes. So the story of self is kind of to make a kind of regrouping what we already had talked about a little bit in the past introduction section. So we just want to know, like, what motivated you to come today? Where do you come from, and what perspective do you view the world in? And what are some of the experiences that you've encountered on your journey? And then the last prompt is, who or what made you the person that you are today? Are there any experiences that really impacted you? So if you could take a little bit of time to reflect on that. I think just for the sake of time, if there's one or two people who want to quickly share out, or you can share out in the Zoom chat reflecting on these prompts and what your story of self is, and kind of what is guiding you and pushing you to do this work. That would be awesome. So yeah, either chat it up, or if you want to share out. We've got an intro from Devin. Hey Dev, she, her, hers. She's a freelance photographer. She's a volunteer with us, and she's connected with the arts community. And she's interested and passionate about finding intersectionality between storytelling and community development through photography. That's awesome. Thanks, Devin. So take a little bit of time to reflect on the prompts. Does anyone have any thing about themselves that they want to share out as we're reflecting on our story of self and what perspectives we bring to our work?
I would just say, this is Kimmer, in response to the second one, where do you come from and the perspective you view the world in? My sort of guiding philosophy is that, and I mentioned it earlier, we all have purpose and we all have value, and that even includes people we may not necessarily like or get along with. And so I try to remember that when I am dealing with people, and that also we all come with our own baggage. So someone may do something, excuse my language, to piss me off, but I recognize that we all go through things, and I don't know what this person went through before I met them to make them the way that they are. So I try to remember that when I'm dealing with people, and that was before I got elected. It's just in dealing with people, period. Yeah, so it's kind of like one of my perspectives, I guess.
I have one. I was just thinking about this recently because I was talking to a group of students at UNL in like this like interview thing. It was really fun. But even in my arts organizing or my community building, I bring the perspective of thinking about what I'm doing through the lens of socially engaged art or social practice, which is its own sort of like area of art making. And I think that's allowed me to see my organizing more open, with a more open mind, to consider what have we not tried, or what ways might we reconsider this, or what elements might we bring into it that I don't think I would do that if I was just imagining myself as only an organizer or a community builder. But I also think of myself as a socially engaged artist doing community organizing work. So I hope that makes sense.
Thanks, Kat and Kimura. Does anyone else want to share what are some of the experiences that made you who you are today? And are there any experiences that are really impacting you, especially as we're considering, improving our own communities? What was that kind of impetus or that moment, or if there was a series of moments where you decided, this is for me, this is what I want to do?
I can go. I guess students really drive me, or youth in general really drive me. Anybody above the age of 5, I'm not as into the under 5s, those are for other people, but elementary, middle, high school ages. I used to work in the Belmont neighborhood with an elementary and middle school, and the students really guided my work. And so a lot of it is coming back to, will this benefit students? Will this benefit their families? But my Belmont and Goodrich students just have continued to have an impact on me.
Thanks, Lindsay. So because we're running a little bit short on time, I also want to make sure that we're still thinking about these questions. I like to come back to these questions when I need some guidance in myself, or when I'm feeling like the work has just become a little bit too much. I like to reflect on where I've come from, what perspective I'm bringing, and also the why, right? Why am I doing this work? And it really gets me to think about the ways that it's important and vital for all of us to do our small part, however we want to, in whatever role we think is most effective. So just to kind of wrap it up, we're really focused on the idea of connecting ourselves to action. because every person has a valuable story. Kimura was really like spot on with this, so thank you. Each person belongs in a community, and each community has valuable assets. So we are all individually community assets, and we all make up the collective of our community's assets. And we're also working together for the common good, right? Every person is a part of the community's story, and we also want to make sure that the story is a story of us, the collective, not what someone else externally puts on us, but what we identify as, and how we can be proud of the things that we are accomplishing. And so through that, we're also working for the good together to achieve the common good. And so that's kind of why we're all here, right? We all want to work together to achieve the common good. And so our work must inherently have that common good perspective. Kimura said ABCD. I love that. Asset-based community development. That's what we're all about. And Kat has done a really great job in our neighborhood of focusing the art on the good things. I know that Lindsay really works on the strengths of her neighborhood. And yeah, all of this, kind of funnels into why we're here today. Great, so keep those prompts in mind. Keep those reasons for why you're staying engaged in mind as we move forward. And I'm gonna hand it over to Vic. I think Vic is leading our next session. Thanks for sharing, everyone.
I'm gonna, Isabel, just for sake, if you're okay with it, we won't need to pass the share screen if you will just click forward when I ask you to. And actually you can click forward right now. So this short session, and for sake of time as well, this is gonna be a little bit more of a modeling rather than as much in the actual practice than maybe I would have done if we had had a bit more time. But this is about the current situation that we're in and the systems that have resulted from that, and acknowledging that. And I was in a meeting early on in March, last week of March or something, and someone had asked, does anyone have any needs right now that aren't being met? And I think that was a great modeling of what I think of as radical accountability, not radical in the sense that it is pushing past a boundary that has not been explored before, but rather that it is requiring a knowledge and acknowledgement of yourself, and that it is not a task-oriented accountability, like, did you do this yet? But rather, are you okay? Which is not something that is really accepted nor mainstreamed in how we typically interact with folks that are outside of our intimate circles. And so that radicalness comes from really being connected, really acknowledging where you're at and how you're doing, and then sharing that with other people, which I think in this crisis is something that's necessary with any group where we are trying to accomplish and acknowledge or kind of ascend to a task-oriented or problem-solving sort of place. Isabel, you can get to the next slide or move to the next slide. Thank you. So this acknowledging and grounding are two different acts that are, while often symbiotic, are unique acts. They do stand alone. And so I identify two parts to acknowledging, especially when you're faced with something that's traumatic, like a pandemic. And there's observing, witnessing, and noticing. So I don't like to use the word looking because that really limits it to one sense. But it really is using all of your senses. And then the second part of that, admitting, accepting, and recognizing, which is far harder, I know, for myself, to actually take what I'm synthesizing and say, okay, this is real, this is a reality, this is how it is. And being able to then move on to the next step, which is the grounding, which again, still is not, it's not solving. Grounding is still not solving. You're doing acknowledging and grounding before you even get to the problem solving, which doesn't even have to be there. But then grounding also requires a choice. You can be grounding in and because of what we are acknowledging, or you could be grounding despite what we are acknowledging. And even when it's despite, you're still letting those realities exist. You're not saying this isn't, when trying to be an optimist, being an optimist, however that strikes you, if that rubs you the right way or the wrong way, it's still, I find, is not saying that things are not the way that they are because we got to look at the positive side. It's saying things are still this way, and we are choosing to look at how we can move past it, which again, I think is a requirement to then ground and say, this is what we have, and in the ABCD, these are the assets we have right now. This is what's available to us. These are the connections that we have. And it's a circus. It's a three-ring circus often of handling all of this. But it can have a lot of fruitful thought and kind of emotional benefit to then face the really tough things, like social isolation and people getting kicked off unemployment because the governor wants to reopen too early, for example. You can go to the next slide, Isabel. And so then in that, this acknowledgement is that given its current moment, given the isolation necessary for response to this public health crisis, there are different systems that have grown from it. Some technological, like apps, digital forms, Zoom, Facebook and Instagram Live, hotlines as well, so phone centric things. But as community builders, all of us here, as people interested in building up community, we do recognize that all of these require some sort of tech and some sort of ability. And we aren't going to necessarily go through this exercise, but this is a thing to think about as we also move forward the rest of this. For whom is this space right here not accessible? Who have you struggled with in the last 2 months or more to connect with because of these different tech and ability barriers? And what do you, in a moment of empathy too, which I know is a strong suit of people in this group, what systems have people struggled to connect with because of these barriers? So that is a rough and wild run through of the current situation and systems. There's so much more that we could talk about and exercises to do, but I'm going to pass it, I think, back to Isabel or Nancy, I'm not sure, for, I think, a break.
Thank you so much, Vic. That was really useful. And I think we could probably spend the rest of the day talking about those things. So if anyone wants more information or is looking for some other resources, reach out to Vic or any of the organizers. So let's still take a break right now, get up, stretch, get some more coffee or water, and let's come back at 11. And that is when I will send everyone to the breakout rooms, either for virtual facilitation with Jose and Daniel, or fundraising and seeking sponsorship partners with myself and Amanda, who will be joining us at that time. So take a break, come back at 11, please. Thank you.
I'll hang out here if anyone wants to hang out.
Let's chill.
I'll be here.
Yeah, I was wondering, can people hear me now?
Yes, Devin.
Okay.
Awesome.
Sweet. Incredible. One question I have for you, Isabel, regarding the breakout sessions is what is kind of like an opener, like kind of like beginning, I don't know, something that would like fit me, like in a sense of like, I'm not necessarily like a community builder yet, but I'm like passionate about like the process and I want to like learn more. What would you recommend? Like what breakout session would you recommend I like go to? Or
I think you're absolutely already a community builder because
Well,
you're so
sure.
involved.
Dang.
I was gonna say too, I was like, I disagree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
But yeah, both of the breakout sessions are whether you want to focus on like fundraising and sponsorships,
Okay.
or the other breakout session is facilitating virtual trainings, or virtual hangouts or virtual get-togethers. So depends on what your interest is. They're kind of two really different ones.
Yeah.
We just thought that those two would be most relevant to folks participating today. So if you want to learn how to get that shmoney, definitely do the virtual fundraiser.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm glad your audio is working now.
Me too. Gosh, I don't know what happened. I have like logged on to Zoom like a couple of times and I've never ran into that like issue before. So I unfortunately just had to like leave and then come back in, and now we're all fine and dandy. So I'm pumped about that. Yeah, but I'm going to grab some water real quick. So peace out.
Cool.
I have a question.
Huh?
The virtual facilitation one, what kind of stuff are they going to go over? Because I'm kind of torn between the fundraising one. We have to do a fundraiser next month virtually, and I feel like that's what I should go to. But the virtual facilitation is super important to me too, because I'm doing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, Jose, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So we'll be talking about like starting off with how do you build just human connections virtually. So saving space for getting to know each other, understanding where everyone's at, and then transitioning a little bit about how to use the technology that's at our disposal. So stuff like Zoom, the Google Suite, different cool technologies to keep people engaged. And if you want to have a productive meeting, kind of moving that process along.
Darn. So is there any way then to maybe like get with the fundraising people later? I don't know, because I feel like I want to go to both and I probably can't. So I want to be able to like connect with the fundraising people again. Would that be cool?
Yeah, for sure. And since you're specifically looking for information about like virtual fundraising,
any kind of fundraising, really.
Okay.
Just any kind of fundraising.
Okay.
Because I also, yeah, any kind.
Well, I'm happy to send you, I think in the email I sent, I did include the presentation, but I can get, like, we can have a separate conversation at another time, or you can send me questions.
I'm a questions person. Yeah, I'm always going to have like a bunch of questions. So
why don't you, what you can do then is you can just like look through the presentation that I emailed out and then just hit me up with a bunch of questions. And
I think I already sent you like a Facebook friend request. I'm super stalker, y'all. So I was like, Facebook. But anyway.
I love it. That's great.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm glad I came on a Saturday. Because I was like, hey, it's Saturday. I don't know.
I like to sleep in on the weekends and pretty much any opportunity. So I was like, 10 a.m. on a Saturday.
My body is on such a clock. I have to force myself to sleep in. I hate that. I want to just sleep in sometimes. I wake up and I'm like, dang it. I just don't want to wake up right now, but it's okay.
There's so much life to experience, is what you're saying. You got to go and experience it.
I think so. I'll be 45 this year. So like I've been working for like almost 30 years, y'all. So my body is just like on a serious clock. I'm used to getting up at like 6 a.m. or whatever. And yeah, so yeah.
Kimura, is that how you say your name?
Yes.
I had a quick question. In the chat, you said that your family hosts internal elections. What does that mean?
Yes. So my mother is from Farmerville, Louisiana, and my grandmother and her cousin, which is my cousin, back in 1977, we started the family reunion every other year, and they hold elections. So we have a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, sergeant at arms, because my family can get crazy. And we have like in Farmerville, like we have a fund too. We pay dues. So like if you're 18 and older, it's like a certain amount, $150. If you're 18 or 17, 12 to 17, it's $50. Under that, you pay for your t-shirt. But the money goes towards like the food when we get together. And we have the house my grandmother was born in had a chimney, so we took all the bricks and made like a sidewalk and have a park like with benches and stuff like that. So yeah, we hold elections, and it's kind of crazy. We had our elections last year, and my family convinced me to run for vice president, and my cousin Dre, his husband, he got married like couple years ago, and his husband is amazing, okay? So he ran for vice president too, and he got elected. So it was like, hold up, dude. Like, how you come in the family new and get picked over me, you know? So it's like for real out here. I've watched my family politics for years. When David Duke, and this is probably before some people's time, but David Duke ran for governor of Louisiana, and we had a family reunion that year. My cousin Tawaski worked on the campaign for the man who beat him. But I remember that was my first experience with like the KKK, you know, and so my family has always been super like social justice active. I didn't know that's what it was back then. So when you guys ask that question, I'm like, this is for sure like where this came from, like all day long. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, so yeah, we hold elections, and yeah, it's interesting. It's fun. It's fun.
That's such a great way to keep organized, because our family just gets together and it's like, just like chaos the whole time. It's great.
Yeah, we also vote like on where we have it at. So like we throw in a bunch of ideas, and whichever place gets the most votes, that's where we go. So we've been to like Vegas, Seattle, Texas. They hate coming to Omaha. They've been here twice. But yeah, they hate coming to Nebraska. Yeah.
I have a question on that. Does that help? I find sometimes I've witnessed both in my family, we don't have a large family, but in my family and as well as some friends' family, women are often tasked with all the responsibilities of like, whether consciously or unconsciously, to like get everything together and like honestly do most things with a reunion. Does the election help with that? Or I don't know.
I would have to say it probably does, because I don't remember ever having that experience. The men and the women have been like equally involved in stuff, I think, when I think back. Because like, again, my grandmother started it, but her cousin is a male. And when I think back about different presidents, it's been men and women since way back. Everybody kind of has their thing they have to do. We have committees now. We have like a communications committee now, and stuff like that to handle like the Facebook and different stuff. I think it does help. And I think it also helps you. I think I learned how to be diplomatic through that. Even just from the experience of watching family argue, it's like, okay, I don't ever want to do that, you know? So I think I learned a lot through it. I probably had some trauma through it too, but for the most part, it's been a great, I'm appreciative in hindsight, right? I'm appreciative in hindsight. I thought they were crazy back then though. Like, what is wrong with my family? Like, oh, crazy. But in hindsight, they weren't. They were just proactive and believed in voting and stuff like that. And I'm super happy about that. Yeah. Still crazy though, but that's okay. I love them.
I've never heard of such an organized family in my life. I'm mind blown, deeply mind blown right now. Anyone else mind blown? Just me, maybe?
But you know what is interesting? I think it's something though, I've seen it in a few other, but it's always been in Black families. And I think in my mind, what it might have been is not having the opportunity to be able to, back then, being able to organize outside of your home. So maybe they just did it because they could do it amongst themselves. I don't know. I've seen a few other families do it. There's a family in Omaha, the one that Gabrielle Union is related to, the dozens of cousins. They have officers in their family too, and they've been doing this for over 100 years. So yeah. I suggest all families do it. I suggest, like, now, since people are sitting at home anyway, it's a great time to organize. You can do that for free with your own family. You can do it even in your own family, mom, dad, son, and daughter. Let daughter be president for a week. See what real life is like for a week. But anyway.
I don't know if people saw the little thing that I sent out. I just found out about this workshop series last night. It starts tomorrow. And there's like individual topics. It's for disability. But some of the some of the topics look really interesting. So I think you're supposed to sign up and then you'll get the information. So I signed up last night and got an email.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karina. All right, so we are at 11 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and send everyone to their breakout sessions, and we'll meet back in the main room around 11:30-ish. So just want to try to stay on schedule. All right, we're gonna give this a shot.
How's it going?
Hi, friends.
It would help if I assigned myself to the room and the session that I'm actually part of leading.
Yeah, Nancy, if you would, please.
Oh, this is a day, y'all. Okay. So I need to pull up our presentation.
This is very timely because we're in the middle of Give to Lincoln Day month. So
I hadn't even thought about that. Okay.
I have been getting South of Downtown's Give to Lincoln Day solicitations, so get ready for a donation.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So this is a little bit one of the smaller, I think our session is a little bit smaller than the other one. But I just want to go around and everyone can do a quick introduction, especially like around your organization and the role in your organization. And just what are some of your fundraising goals? What are some of the things you want to talk about today? So Isabel, do you want to start us off maybe?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short because my landlord is mowing right now, if you can hear that. My name's Isabel. I think everyone knows me in this session. Yeah. What I hope to accomplish is I really want to get more, hold on.
Kat, do you want to go and then we'll have Isabel go?
Sure. So I know everyone here, so I'm not going to introduce myself, but yeah, it's Give to Lincoln Day, and last year we did okay at Give to Lincoln Day, but I wanted to like add 25 or 40% increase to what we made last year, which is my goal for this year. And I think a big part of our goal is just to be consistent and strategic about like what we're asking, how we're asking, and yeah, and I think because normally we're kind of fundraising separately for the arts organizing as compared to like funding our jobs. Like those are two different pots of money. We're kind of using very different strategies to do that. So a lot of our programs are funded through like the Lincoln Arts Council. We're applying through the Nebraska Arts Council, and then we have a Rotary pot that was like kind of been our like the base of the Art Hub programs. So just kind of trying to diversify is my goal right now.
Anyone else that wants to just share? I mean, a lot of us in this group are all from CIL. So anyone else, Karina or Ali, or any of the organizers who want to share what they want to get out of this session?
Yeah, I was thinking it would be really great if I could write a grant for the CDO because I don't know, we keep getting grants from like Lincoln organizations, but it might be nice if there was like a particular project or whatever that could tie to a national fundraising group. And there isn't really time for like the existing staff to do that. And I think it would be really good for like board member engagement and stuff to say like, oh, look what our board member did. Kind of, yeah. And just getting those skills in particular project-based things.
That's so nice.
Kind of what Kat was, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm just interested in kind of learning about fundraising during a time when it's, you know, really uncertain right now. And I feel like there's a lot of organizations we're talking about more, and how can you fundraise for organizations that maybe aren't specifically focusing on unemployment or COVID relief, and how you can kind of still be getting the word out and getting people to support you when there are so many important organizations to be supporting right now.
I just want to be more comfortable in making that ask from folks. I'm really bad at asking for money, which is a big part of our work because it's not free. And sometimes you really have to make the case for it. But yeah, just making that ask is really uncomfortable for me. Something that it's a growing edge.
I heard some advice yesterday from one of my former supervisors, and he said that we just have to have the confidence of a mediocre white man to make that ask. So
Ali, I think that probably should go in our presentation. Nancy, I don't know how you feel about it, but yes.
That is on point. Thank you, Ali. Anything else anyone wants to share before we get rolling on this?
on another note, I'm also interested in maintaining relationships with small donors and just making sure that everyone who donates feels appreciated, and that we reach out to them afterwards to let them know, that their donation went to a lot of good work.
That's a great point. So I'm gonna start this out with a few different just kind of ground level basic things to consider when you're thinking about fundraising. So knowing your organization or the group that you're a part of, whether you're a board member or it's where you're housed and where you're working, you're the person who knows that organization in and out. You know the focus, maybe what people think you do versus what you actually do. And then just kind of considering the different layers that go with that. Why have people given to you in the past? Why do people like what you're doing? What are some things they don't like that you're doing? Because that's a thing that exists with a lot of different nonprofits or just various groups that are trying to fundraise. But yeah, why have people given you money in the past, either when you're thinking about a campaign like Gift to Lincoln Day, or with grant writing? One thing, Girl Power, I'll just use that as an example since I'm on the board for Girl Power. We've struggled a lot with grant writing, with receiving grant funding. There's a few different reasons for that. One of them is there is one staff member for the entire organization, and the rest is just fully volunteer board driven. And that's a lot of work. So applying for grants, whether the executive director is the one writing the grant proposal or a board member, we've been trying to do a better job of coordinating that effort, being more collaborative with that, and just recognizing some of these questions and thinking about it more broadly and more specifically. So what funders are we reaching out to, and why haven't they given us money in the past? Is that something that we're not doing on the local level that we need to be focusing on more? And where do we need to, how do we have those conversations with those funders to really get down to that? Feel free to, if you have questions, just feel free to jump in and ask. So, with being a member of your organization, whether you're staff or a board member or just any community group that you serve on, you do have some fundraising responsibilities. So you want to make sure that you define and clarify that mission, that you understand what the mission and the vision is going forward. So when you are put on the spot by someone that you're asking for money and they ask you those questions, you are able to back that up and to provide that. You want to be able to support the sustainability of the organization long-term. Identifying strong leadership, that's something that's really important, and helping to build that collaboration and that cohesion as you're going forward and building that sort of like donor base and that funding base is really important. looking at and approving the budgets and those sorts of things. So, you know, like, okay, we're lacking right here. This is where we need to be focusing our effort. You know, one year you did great in Give to Lincoln. The next year, maybe you didn't do so great. So you have to consider what the components of that were and how do you kind of shift that and pivot that. I know right now, obviously, there are a lot of things going on with COVID that fundraising is going to be complicated. It's going to be much more difficult because a lot of people are vying for the same money, either from, you know, individual donors. The people who've been able to support you in the past may not be able to support you right now. So I don't know that I have a great answer for that, or, you know, what can make that go forward, but just having that base of, this is what we do at the south of downtown, or this is what we do at Girl Power. And this is what we will continue to work on, and getting that support from people, even if it's just a little bit of money, that can go a long way, and helping create that long-term donor base. So when they are able to give a little bit more next year or the year after that, they're there for you and they're still going to be supporting you. Continue to plan for the future of the organization and try to be familiar with the overall fundraising plan. One thing I spent a better part of January working on for Girl Power is an overall fundraising plan. It was a lot of work and the first part is just like coming up with the strategy for it, but the harder part is actually following through. So making sure that you have everything in order for the marketing strategy for Give to Lincoln Day. I know, Kat, you've been working super hard on that for the CDO. So like asking people, one thing I have to do this weekend is send a selfie, not jazzed about that, send a selfie to my executive director with a quote that says why I support Girl Power and why I serve on the board. But just having that like interaction and being able to work together with your board or your organization group to make sure that you have an understanding of the plan. So when you move forward with that, you're all on the same page and you realize where your responsibilities lie in that process.
Nancy, could I jump in here and add
Absolutely.
one thing under like plan for the future of the organization and a fundraising plan? I think one thing as organizations like grow and mature, one thing that I've seen work well is some sort of strategic plan. And it doesn't have to be this fancy, like, you know, professional facilitator led thing, right? It's just like, what is the strategic vision for this organization for the next 2 years or 5 years or 10 years? Because a lot of funders want to know that their investment in 1 year won't just be a drop in the bucket, right? They want to know that this organization that you're a part of and asking on behalf of will continue to see success in the future. So I would call out that like a strategic plan and like some sort of fundraising or revenue stream plan within that is a great idea.
Absolutely. That's a great point. It's one of the reasons that we've struggled a little bit at Girl Power is we need to have that, especially understanding the growth internationally versus locally. Local funders, you know, are going to feel more comfortable knowing that their dollars and just local donors, that their dollars are going toward like the Lincoln-based programming. So having that general understanding is super helpful. And then, you know, you also have a responsibility to participate in the fundraising process. I don't know, there's kind of this like old school notion that if you serve on a board or you work in an organization where you're helping fundraise, that you have to also give some kind of monetary component. I'm kind of on the fence about that. It definitely, if you're able to, I think that that's one thing, but I think you can do other things to help in that fundraising process. And if that just means getting donations from other folks, if you don't have the means to be able to donate, you know, X number of dollars, I don't think that should necessarily be a requirement, but just participating in that and asking people, which is the hardest part oftentimes, but being a strong proponent in that process is definitely important. So kind of to add on to that, your role as a member of the organization or the group is to clearly define the annual fundraising goals, to delegate those responsibilities. My favorite thing to do as board president is tell people how they can help and how it makes a huge difference, because it cannot fall on one or two people. Everyone has to participate in that. It's just way too big of a lift for a couple of folks to take that on. Even if you do have development people in your organization or on your board, that's a lot of work. So you have to be able to have everybody pitch in. Creating some fundraising and donor recognition policies, and then ensure those fundraising methods adhere to various ethical standards, just staying on top of those guidelines for yourself and for your organizational group. I apologize if I go through this fast, but I'm just looking at the time. So some reasons that people do give, feeling a connection to the organization, you know, for the CDO, if you live in the near South, if you're a resident there, if you're seeing the great work that's happening, and also just like understanding and being a part of that process, you're able to bring people into that and build those relationships and partnerships. And that's why people will give, is they feel that connection and that strong understanding of what you do and why you do it. You see who your friends are giving to, your colleagues, you know, the nonprofits and the other groups that you have relationships with. Simply asking, it's kind of amazing, but it's a real thing. Like, until you ask someone to make a donation or to give to a group that you care about, they probably just never thought about it before or didn't realize maybe that you needed it. So if you just ask, it'll probably happen, which sounds really simple, but it's a real thing. People want to make it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I do want to like shout out though, Isabel, I think it was last year in south of downtown. A lot of times, like on Give to Lincoln Day, that's a pretty noisy space, right? Every Lincoln nonprofit is asking for your dollars. So what set south of downtown apart for me is that Isabel reached out individually and said, hey, Amanda, I love working with you and others on the CIL project. I would be really honored if you would consider south of downtown in your donations today. And that made it easy for me, like absolutely. Like I support my work or SDCDO's work on the daily. Why wouldn't I support it with my dollars too? And so someone asked me, and someone I had a connection to or a relationship with. So I think that's really powerful. And then I'll shut up.
I had no idea that I did that. So thanks for the reminder.
You did, and did it so well.
I was gonna say, you looked really confused when Amanda was saying that. But yeah, I think that's a great point. Until you make that connection with someone, they're not going to know that it made a difference, or that, you know, the dollars are going to go that much further for their group. There are some reasons people don't give. So this is kind of the flip side of that. You know, maybe you're not communicating with your donors enough, or they're not seeing where their money is going or what the impact has really had. I mean, this is a bunch of different reasons that people maybe don't feel comfortable or just don't understand where their money is going or how it's impacting the organization. So, you know, I guess these are just some of those things that you can kind of look at and think about when you're getting down to it and considering why people would maybe consider giving to you and supporting your needs. I'm going to pass it over to Amanda for this next section.
You bet. I also will try and go fast since we just have about 10 minutes. So in one particular model of fundraising, there's 3 stages or 3 kind of phases of fundraising. So this is a fairly simple and straightforward model: cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship. So it's the pre, the during, and the after the ask. In terms of cultivation, this is where you start to identify those potential donors or prospects, right? So this could be based on your fundraising plan, right? Like kind of how much you, like if you want to go towards 80% grants and target 10% individual donors and 10% event-based fundraising, you need to identify prospects within each of those. You want to start with a bigger pool because you'll like funnel it from a lot of prospects all the way down to like actual donors, right? Just any typical pipeline or inverted pyramid. This is not a pyramid scheme. The worst fundraising feels yucky and the best fundraising feels genuine, right? So you want to start by identifying those potential donors. People who obviously are affected by what you do, live in your neighborhood, are clients perhaps of your organization, and then start to like build out circles. Okay, who knows those people, right? So if I can see that south of downtown makes it great and has a positive impact on my friend who lives at 16th and G, like think about their social circles, right? So because I care about south of downtown because my friends live there. So kind of broadening it, not just for the core people that you serve, but the people who, again, in terms of their circles, touch those individuals. And then you start to build relationships with those prospects. On an individual donor level, that usually looks like, hey, let's go out and grab a cup of coffee. I would love to tell you more about the south of downtown, or I would love to tell you more about Girl Power. I would love to talk to you about Clinic with a Heart. That's the board that I serve on, so I might use a couple of examples from there. In terms of relationships with grant funding prospects, so foundations, private or public, that's where you start so kind of sending an email to program officers. So if they have their program officers listed, great. Reaching out to one that you think kind of aligns with your impact area or your focus of your organization is a great first step. Again, I'd love to get to know you at the Peter Kiewit Foundation. Let's sit down and have coffee or lunch, and I'll tell you about south of downtown. Generating interest in the organization. This is where I tend to get, in building my own kind of fundraising style and being aware of what I do and don't do, I realize that when I try to generate interest in Civic Nebraska or Clinic with a Heart, I tend to focus on maybe like a really clinical approach. Like I tell them, here's our ROI, or here's how many people we serve. And I think those are good things. But one thing I would say is like, let your passion for your organization that you serve or that you're, involved in carry you, right? Again, it kind of goes back to Nancy's future selfie and the why I give, right? Most funders are not cold-hearted. They'll be excited to hear like, why do you love what you do for this organization? So let your like excitement and your enthusiasm for the work and the mission carry you there. And then, of course, showing more so than telling, if possible, your prospects or your donors what the organization is all about. So, of course, some of that comes in the administrative form of finances, annual reviews, strategic plans, blah, blah, blah. But showing could be, for instance, we've invited several of our like foundation funders to join us on a capital experience day so they can see the program that they're funding in action, right? So they can feel how beautiful it is when a student says, gosh, I've never been here before, and this is such a cool place, and I feel like my voice is heard, or something like that. So that's a real great opportunity. When we go to cultivation, when we go to solicitation, and this is to Isabel's point or question about like making the ask, or Allie, your point about have all the confidence of a mediocre white man. I will say this is a hard thing for me too. I think it is for a lot of people in development and fundraising. But here's what I would say. So here's a couple of, options in terms of participating one-on-one, direct mail or telephone, whatever mode you choose. I think when you rely upon your enthusiasm or your belief in the work, that will drive you forward. So sometimes I just remind myself, like, I love what we do. At Clinic with a Heart, if I don't make this ask today, I'm doing a disservice to the clinic and the people that rely on it for healthcare, right? Or I say, I've done all this prep work, right? Like I've gotten to know this donor. I've had a conversation. I've done my research. So all of that effort will be for naught if I don't make the ask today. So those are kind of my two tips, or like in terms of like, how do I get myself and motivate myself to like ultimately make the ask? Those are the two ways that I really rely upon most of the time. And then the final stage is that stewardship. So that's what comes after the ask and perhaps after the gift. Following up to let them know that their gift made a difference. Maintaining those, just staying in touch with major changes or updates. You know, hey, so-and-so who led the Capital Experience Day program has left to take another opportunity. While we're grateful for her efforts, you know, here's how we plan to transition. A well-written, handwritten thank you letter will go a long way. I would emphasize the handwritten is really helpful if at all possible. And then again, invite them to certain things. Like now they are really an ambassador for your work because they have invested in your work. So inviting them to have a special kind of role at your event, or inviting them ahead of time to certain things, those are all really valuable tools for stewarding their future gifts as well.
Can I jump in really quick?
Yeah, of course.
So one thing that Julie, who is the executive director of Girl Power, started doing since Give to Lincoln Day launched, you know, or like the month of giving in May, she started sending out video thank yous to people who have donated, and we have gotten wonderful feedback. And some people have donated again because of it. Or they're sharing with more people. So we've seen it, like an increase. And I think, you know, partially it's just because we don't have that physical connection anymore. So Julie can't just like go up to someone and give them a hug and say, thank you so much for your donation. So she's been doing these like very individualized video thank yous. And that's been a huge hit. So I just wanted to throw that out there and let you know that that's been really wonderful for us. And so just an idea if anyone else wanted to try that.
That's cool. I like that idea a lot. It's very personal, right? And especially in this virtual space that we're all in, it's a way to like break through the noise a little bit. Great. Okay, so to get involved with that cultivation stage, making personal contact with your prospects and thinking about your own networks, like who cares about you? Who do you know that cares about this work, right? And again, a personal email, an invitation to sit down and have a conversation, that sort of thing. That's another thing that has helped me when making asks, is that it's just a conversation, right? Like I'm just pursuing, much like I'm getting to know someone for understanding if they're a right fit for a job, like I'm just having a conversation to understand if this is a right fit for donations or stewarding a gift. So showing prospects the facilities, that's great for a capital campaign, obviously, but just showing prospects your program, your, you know, whatever it may be, sharing your enthusiasm, and then share the history as well. So those are kind of at least 4 puzzle pieces. Even if you can't do every one of them as a board member or an individual, being a part of this is great. To get involved with solicitation, the case statement in fundraising or development world and language is really like why we're asking you to give, or why we're asking that donor, that grant, or that, you know, why it's important that they give. We're making a strong case statement for why they should invest in us. So you focus on your results, not necessarily your needs. Needs are important, and some funders will ask you for that, and I think that's awesome. But by showing them your results, you're saying like, this is what we can accomplish with your investment. So that's great. Include clear essential facts, obviously, and then connecting it to community or connecting it to their values is often another thing that we see happen to great success. So like, what values do they have? Is one of their values access to healthcare? Then great, Clinic with a Heart is a natural fit. If their value is really about education, then maybe we talk about some of our healthcare education classes, that sort of thing. How to get involved with the stewardship kind of section or stage of fundraising. That's where it helps from a board member's perspective to like be able to send like, thank you for your donation. I know I'm not involved in the day-to-day, but seeing your name come across our donor list really made me grateful for your investment. So you can personally thank those donors. You can invite those donors to continue to connect with the organization in a myriad of ways. That sort of thing. So it's a great way to do it. If you wanted to boil it down to a different 4-point model, the kind of case statement or the 4 things that you need to know is the mission, the goals of your organization, how to ask, which we're talking about now, and how to overcome those fears. So if you can do these 4 things, you're going to just have these 4 components, you're going to be a more successful fundraiser than most people. So I think it's right at 11:30. I'll turn it back over to Nancy, and then perhaps we can open up for questions.
Yeah, so everyone, and I know Isabel and the other CIL folks, I didn't send this presentation to you, but I can. I'll send it to you right after this. So there's just some other slides in here about making the ask, and then I have some like best practices for different kinds of letters, and then there's some examples of like, I'll just go to that really quick. Examples for like different sponsorship levels. So if you're having an event, or even, you know, for Give to Lincoln Day, like if you give $25, this is what that would go to. We've found both at Civic Nebraska and in Girl Power, that's been a huge success in getting people to donate. And again, there's different tiers just because you don't want to ask people to give what they can't, but sometimes that is kind of a motivator, and it's definitely helped. It helps people know what they're giving to. You know, for Girl Power, if you give $25, it's going to provide X number of backpacks to girls in the Lincoln programming. So it just is a really great way to make that connection and understand where your dollars are going. And then for an event, Civic Nebraska does something similar to that. So a sponsorship request and what those different levels are. So what you'll get from that, and then just kind of having those different tiers is really, really helpful. And then here are just some different resources where I gathered a lot of this information from, but again, a lot of it is just from personal experience, serving on a board, being a part of a nonprofit, and having to, you know, just knowing this is kind of part of the gig. So any questions that I can answer really quickly? We'll just go for another couple minutes here before we go back to the main room.
What kind of recognition policies exist? Because you mentioned like having actual policies in place for like how you do stuff, and you also mentioned like ethical policies. What would be examples of those things?
Amanda, do you have any?
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind in terms of ethical policies, not so much the stewardship policy, you could perhaps put in like a best practice. Like if this is a donor, you know, $50 or above, they get a, you know, a handwritten thank you note. So like you could put some of those like policies in place so that guide your team if you feel like the stewardship has been inconsistent in the past. Not saying you have to do that, but that's one way to go about it. The ethical stewardship, for me, I think goes to, or policies around that, is that we don't take any more than like 20% of each 20% of each grant goes to administrative or general operating. Any more than that is unethical, right? In our mind, like we want it to go to the program. So having that baseline policy. I guess another thing is like if someone, an ethical one that might, or an example that might be a little bit tricky is like, so say you send out a solicitation at Civic Nebraska for like voting rights. Like it's a real push right around the time of the 2020 general election. And we're saying your donation will help, you know, provide election protection dollars, blah, blah, blah. So if you took all of those dollars and then put them in our like civic health team or our program budget, that would be unethical because we told donors that we were using their contributions for our voting rights team programming, right? So I think having the kind of ethical policies in place to say like any solicitation that mentions a particular program or program area must go to that, or just understanding like when you get a sponsorship, where that goes to, is that a general operating sponsorship, is it program sponsorship? Those would be the kind of the policies, I think, in terms of ethics and ethical spending. You're just trying to steward those donors, and the donor intent is important. Yeah.
I took a class actually in the MBA program at UNL last semester about nonprofit management, and they got into the fact that there's actually some tax laws about like when it's considered that you have to use the money for a particular project versus like when you have some flexibility. So you also want to make sure that you're following the tax laws about that.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and like we've had conversations where like last year's Girl Power annual fundraiser was to help get funding for our Jamaica program because we were getting that off of the ground. And you know, the board had a really long discussion about like, okay, so are we strictly saying all of the funding from this fundraiser is going to Jamaica only, because that's not viable for us as a small organization. That money has to kind of be scattered around in all three of our program areas. So we really had to look at how we were marketing that, what we were telling people, like, this is where your money is going, because it's just, you don't want to tell someone like, yeah, you're giving money to the voting rights program, and then actually it ends up, you know, with you civic leadership or civic health or something. So just doing the right thing and making sure that you're following through with what you've said is on point.
A quick note, because I'm sure we have to go back, but Karina, you had talked about maybe like some national funders, and in the chat, I added a resource. So I think national funders are just hard. They're not looking at Nebraska or even Lincoln, Nebraska, which makes me sad. Not to dissuade you, I think you should go for this. One particular organization that I'm familiar with is like a network called Philanthropy for Active Civic Engagement, or PACE, and they have their members listed. So if you have like a civic engagement or community engagement sort of bent to your particular ask, that might be a good place to start as one of the funders on those lists, because they have committed that they will support, their philanthropic dollars will support civic engagement. So for what it's worth. And there's some other funder networks out there too. I think there's a neighborhoods based one. Let me do some research.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Any other follow-up questions before we wrap up? Sorry, this had to be so, we're learning things about future virtual CBWs and the timing of them and how much we can fit into 2 hours.
Have board members like Karina. That's all.
I'm interested, Karina, if you like Civic Nebraska at all. Just kidding, but offers on the table.
Wait, what? Oh, thanks.
If you want to be a board member and be awesome.
I was just going to say that this has been really helpful for me as someone new to fundraising in a nonprofit space. So thanks. It's been really enlightening.
Awesome. Happy to help. It was definitely one of the biggest barriers for me when I was joining a board. I was very afraid to ask for money from people. But once you get over the first couple, it becomes a lot easier. And then when you just share what you care about and why you support the organizations you do support and why you work for them. And I've found that just having that passion and understanding really goes a long way. And so getting people to understand that and just become a part of that, it has been super helpful in that fundraising aspect. So, all right. So I'm gonna, hopefully the other group has finished up. Otherwise, I'm gonna cut them off and we're gonna go back to the main room now.
This is super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Glad you guys joined.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bulking us up here.
Guess they're not back, those stinkers.
I think
I want to tell you guys
to wrap up.
Kat, what were you saying?
Yes. Speaking of fundraising, I put on makeup today because I'm hosting a workshop at 1 p.m. for Lincoln Calling.
Yeah.
They're fundraising for Lincoln Calling, which will support like local artists, musicians, music venues, and creative folks, which is so important right now. We all need jobs and work and whatnot, and I'm really lucky that I don't have, like, I haven't had financial hardship because of this, but if I was just in my studio and I didn't have like work at the CDO, it would be so hard right now. So definitely think about joining the stream, figuring out why you should give to Lincoln Calling, and we're just gonna like hang out and think about what we're grateful for and go through some different drawing exercises. It should be super fun. So it's at 1, so you can just jump on shortly after this is over.
I hope I didn't cut off the other session too badly.
Yeah, we stopped kind of halfway through, so we'll be able to share the second half of our presentation with everyone in a couple weeks.
Awesome. We're learning about time management and how much we can fit into a 2-hour CBW right now. So we're at 11:40. Jose, do you want to run through the third session that talks about community assets and needs? Or we could pivot and just spend the last 20 minutes just talking and having a more open conversation. I'm really down for either one.
Yeah, I think I like that second option. There should be a worksheet that's attached to your packet that you received either last night or this morning. And so that's usually what we try to use with regular residents on identifying your assets and how do you build some of those people-centered groups, right, to support community action. So I would be happy to connect with anyone and everyone to kind of have a deeper conversation on asset mapping and community building in a separate session, but making sure that we have this space to kind of reflect and get to know each other a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm down for that as well. And the last portion that I was going to run through was kind of that goal identification and project work plan. That's the second half of the asset mapping worksheet. And it's also the last session in the slides that I sent out to everyone. It's pretty straightforward, so you really can kind of walk through that on your own, but feel free to reach out to me or any of the other organizers, and we're happy to walk through those steps with you. We can also do our next virtual CBW as kind of an addendum and a follow-up to those that we didn't get to today. But why don't we just kind of open things up right now, and if anyone has any questions or feedback or thoughts, I'm just going to kind of let's do that right now.
I just had a question about accommodating different languages all at the same time in a virtual setting. And Vic, thank you for your response, but does anybody else have any tips and tricks, or has anybody navigated that?
So I've been working with the Asian Center and doing some conversations, just some community conversations, and it's been really tough. I think that the Asian Center, despite its name, serves a lot of different people from different nationalities, not necessarily from Asia. And so it's been a lot of fun to get to see people virtually and form those connections again. But it is difficult because we're all on Zoom, either on the computer, on the phone, with children in the background. So my answer is that I don't have a magical solution, but I think getting out there and trying to have those conversations, right? And just like we have in general community gatherings where you have leaders and you have people that are kind of connectors already, naturally connectors, they can play that role as well in your virtual meetings and your virtual conversations. You just kind of have to map it out a little bit more on the logistics aspect of it.
So some of you are new faces. Others have been to our prior community builder workshops. What are some of the biggest takeaways from today, or what are some things that you would like us to do in the future for some of these virtual workshops?
I definitely took away the circle technique. I had not heard of it before, so that's something that I think can be helpful. Yeah, I think it'd be really helpful. I've been trying to figure out a way to do something with my SONA meetings, so yeah, I think anything would be beneficial. So whatever you guys have, I'll do my best to attend. So yeah, you all have.
I'm thinking about taking away, Kimera, your family elections. I'm thinking how do I get my family more organized? So that's a great thing. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, we might have to invite you to be a speaker at one of our next sessions so you can share about that.
Something that I'm really just take away is just all the skills people mentioned. I can't remember who mentioned working with like non-traditional students, but I think it's so great to learn about, right, Brooke, I think it's so great to learn about something like that, you know, if you meet someone in the community who is looking to start education, okay, now I have someone, you know, to point them to. And it's nice to learn about these really specific skills that everyone has, because I'm sure we all meet community members all the time and aren't exactly sure where to point them to. And I just appreciate that during this time I'm still able to be meeting new people who are bringing different skills to the table.
Yeah, I really appreciated knowing about that skill, because even in our community, you kind of like, thinking about myself, I was a first generation college student. And so like I didn't have someone to walk through that process with me, and it just kind of like fell into it. And luckily I figured it out. And I'm sure a lot of kids in the neighborhood too are in the same position. So that's really great. I'd really love to stay in contact, Brooke, and see what we can work on together.
My story sounds very similar with the first generation stuff. That's exactly why I got into what I'm in. So yeah. I have to say I was really nervous about coming today. Looking at the questions that we were going to be talking about, I started questioning if this was an okay space for me to be in, because I was trying to figure myself out. And I really am more comfortable now, I guess, in a way. I see what I can bring to the community, even if you guys aren't, I'm sorry, if you folks are not all in higher education, I can still build connections with you that are meaningful. So thanks for having me here, and I will definitely be doing my best to come to more and continue building those connections and seeing how I can participate in the Lincoln community more outside of education as well.
That's so great to hear, Brooke. And Brooke and I know each other from Leadership Lincoln. Brooke is also in Leadership Lincoln this year, and it's been a strange couple of months since we had to switch to the virtual format. But I think that this kind of speaks to how many more connections there are to be made. And, you know, we all have our circles and we all have our communities that we serve in. But we can still bring more people in. We can still utilize the skills that we all have. And I think that's really important, especially right now when, you know, this is a little harder than maybe some of us expected, and it's going on for quite a long time, and we don't know how much longer it will go. But I think having this space to share these things and to be with each other is really important. So Brooke, I'm so glad that you joined us, even though you were a little apprehensive. That's really wonderful.
For me, I'm pretty like new to the whole Zoom world, but I've been like unemployed for the past 6 weeks or so. And I haven't really known how to like navigate this desire I have to share just ideas and things, because something that I really value is like being a part of circles that value like creative thinking and problem solving and things, and just being a part of Jose's and Daniel's group, like receiving kind of like the tools of like, okay, how could I myself be a facilitator within those spaces, and how can I make some of these ideas and questions that I have like come alive via like the platform that I have to communicate and like connect with people on. And so that's what I'm kind of like taking away. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Devin.
This was good for me because, you know, we've been involved with this work in the community, but every time I meet someone new and find out that they're doing things, or somebody that just moved to town or finally graduated college or whatever, and it's just really exciting to me to know that we keep adding to the pool of people that are doing work and keep making connections between them and all that's really important and also really
I really enjoyed the fundraising workshop, which I feel like Isabel and I at South of Downtown, we kind of are just like learning as we go and doing our best. But to kind of realize people that are doing it really well sort of normally started in the same place as a nonprofit. Like you might not already like have expertise in fundraising because you're wearing all these different hats. So to hear like the really personal nature of like how fundraising happens and how you ask people and just like reaching out to your own immediate relationships was really comforting to know that we're doing it pretty well and pretty like there's still things we can improve upon, but like we're not alone in how we're doing it is always great to see. And yeah, it was wonderful. It was nice to meet everyone too virtually.
Well, there is in the email that I sent you all last night, there's a feedback, there's a Google form and evaluation for today's workshop. So please, if you could take the time to fill that out and just let us know how we did, what sessions were helpful, and think about what other breakout sessions or workshops in the future, things that you'd like to learn or connect with people in the community about. Our plan is to continue doing these virtual workshops either bi-weekly or having a couple every month. So we're going to continue to work on the format and see how the timing and all of that works with all of the things that we want to share with y'all. The other thing that we hope to do is have some pre-recorded sessions available that you can watch online. And so you can find us, you can find the Collective Impact Lincoln website. It's housed at civicnebraska.org/impact, and you can find us there. There's also a Facebook group called Collective Impact Lincoln that you can join, and we post all sorts of great events and updates about some of the work that we're doing. If you are interested, we're working in the affordable and adequate housing policy space right now. That's kind of what one of our main policy focuses is right now. And so we're going to continue working on that. If you're interested, you can follow us again on our Facebook page. We post things about that work. But otherwise, find us online, reach out to us, send us an email. We can have a Google Meet or a Zoom meeting if there's something specific you want to talk about. We're all here for you to be able to bounce ideas off of one another and do some brainstorming if you have neighborhood projects you're looking to move forward, or just kind of figuring out how to navigate things in this space right now. We're all doing it together, so we're here to provide any of those resources or feedback to help you along the way. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate all of you, and I'd say that this was pretty good for our first virtual CBW. Thanks so much, everyone. Again, reach out if you have any other questions. It's almost noon, so feel free to stay on for a little bit longer. If you want to chat, I'll stick around. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.